Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughn Manor. And today it is my epic comic book Wednesday. Every Wednesday I talk about a Marvel Comics epic collection, and Steve Donoghue on his channel will talk about that same Marvel epic collection. And this week, the epic collection I'm talking about is the Fantastic Four. Yes, the Fantastic Four. This is Volume 7. This is Battle of the Behemoths. This is Volume 7, which were the Fantastic Four comics that came out between 1970 and 1972. So the beginning of the Bronze Age of comics, and these were the Bronze Age Fantastic Four comics that started at the beginning of the Bronze Age. This has Fantastic Four issues, number 105 through 125. So these issues are pretty important because at this period, this is the period after Jack Kirby had left the book. Jack Kirby, who had drawn 100 issues of the Fantastic Four, more than that actually, he had left the Fantastic Four, and he was replaced by Big John Buscema, who I talked about last week on Conan. He did a fantastic run on the Fantastic Four, which starts in this book. But before I talk about this one, I'm going to talk just a wee little bit about this one. Just to point out a couple things, this is the Fantastic Four, War with Atlantis. This is Volume 6. This is the end of the 60s and the beginning of the 70s. This was the end of Jack Kirby's run. Now, Jack Kirby, when he left the book, he left Marvel Comics, actually, and he went to DC Comics. And his last issue of the Fantastic Four was issue 102. This issue here with the Submariner. Now, the artwork on the Fantastic Four from Jack Kirby just got better and better as time went on, until the very end. Still, most of the artwork in this volume, The War with Atlantis, is pretty darn good. Most of it is. We still have some great Jack Kirby action. He had opened up to larger panels at this point to focus that action. He had a lot of splash pages, stuff like that. We get our old pals, the Inhumans, making a return. But towards the end of his run, there was a pretty clear... The quality definitely kind of dropped a bit towards the very end of his run. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. The artwork kind of simplified. It seemed a bit rushed, a little bit more than we're used to at this point in Jack Kirby's career. It's just really nothing special. And then it moved on to... So he left, and there was an issue that came out that was illustrated by John Romita. And usually John Romita is fantastic. That would be this issue. Not so much in this issue. This issue is not great. And there's Richard Nixon making a guest appearance. I don't know. For me personally, the less Richard Nixon you have in a comic, the better. That could be just me. But the artwork is just not great in this particular issue. Definitely seems rushed. Like perhaps he was called in last minute to do this. It could be the inker who did the inking for Porton. Not the best inker, I don't believe. The following issue also done by Romita. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. And so that was the end of this one, and that's when we start here. Jack Kirby has just left. One thing I was curious about, because I didn't read these issues when they came out, but I think Steve Donoghue did read these as they came out. So I have a direct question. I don't usually have a direct question to Steve, but I'm assuming he's going to watch this video, and he might answer. And that was, as you were reading these, Steve, did you know Jack Kirby was leaving? You must have noticed the difference in quality So I'm wondering what you made of that. Whether you thought he was just like rushed or getting tired of what he was doing, or if you knew that Jack Kirby was leaving. I'm wondering because I wasn't around at the time, and I wonder what fans made of those last few issues before he left. I'm curious what they might have thought. Now this is a whole new thing, though. Suddenly, the Fantastic Four was re-energized by John Buscema, who's just an amazing artist. Now, John Buscema, he doesn't love doing superhero comics, but the superhero comics that he did were pretty great because as an artist, he's just a great artist. Now, the first few issues, couple issues in this are still being done by John Romita. The 2 issues in this epic collection are better than the issues that were in the previous one. But they're not as great as they become immediately when John Buscema takes over the title. He takes over with this issue here. This was issue 107. And there's his version of Jack Kirby's The Thing there on the cover. And that's his opening splash page there with The Thing. Now, in the beginning of this epic collection, The Thing develops the ability to transform from Ben Grimm to the Thing and back just by thinking about it, which seemed like a great solution to his problem because he was always stuck as the Thing. And so now he gets a chance to be himself again. He gets to be handsome Ben Grimm and the Thing when he wants to be the Thing. Now, the first thing you'll notice in this issue is just how great everybody looks. John Buscema took the character designs that we were so used to from Jack Kirby, and he just did he did his own version of all these characters, and he did great. There's the Invisible Woman there, and she looks fantastic. She's never looked better, I think, than she did when John Buscema drew her. And as we saw in the Conan Epic Collection last week, John Buscema was just a master at drawing characters and action, and he was great at composing an exciting comic book page. And it's kind of fun, actually, to see him do genuine comic book artwork. Genuine superhero artwork, I should say. That's what I meant to say. And it was great fun to see him do characters. I mean, he made the Thing look great. This is the definitive version of the Thing, designed by Jack Kirby, but Buscema just gives him a whole new realistic kind of look. I mean, he looks like a monster that could actually exist, and he just does such a fabulous job on him. Everybody else he does great as well. You'll notice when the characters always look their emotions are always very exaggerated. I noticed looking at the artwork in this comic after looking at the Conan artwork, just how noticeable that is. But he's also great at quiet moments as well, because as an illustrator, he's just so immensely talented that he can do pretty much any kind of scene, lay it out brilliantly, and just make everything interesting. Even this intimate moment between Mr. Fantastic and Sue Storm is just beautifully done. And this book is full of that. And of course, when we get to the action, right away here, where we get this great battle between the Thing and the Hulk. And wow, what a Hulk he does. Now, John Buscema had done a Hulk story earlier in his career, which didn't look that great. But man, he's learned a few things since that time, because his Hulk is just brilliant in this issue, fighting the Thing. And it's a great battle. Now, at this point in the story, the Thing his behavior has become erratic. It turns out that transforming from Ben Grimm to the Thing kind of strains his brain in a way. Now, we knew that his transforming back and forth from the Thing to Ben Grimm wasn't going to last. Because it doesn't really... Part of the Thing's whole mystique, you know, the Thing's thing is that he's stuck as being the Thing, and that's what makes him partially a sympathetic character. He's this monster, and he's stuck being a monster. He doesn't come off well at the end of that battle, by the way, and Johnny Storm is very upset about it. Tons of melodrama in these issues. It's interesting to get some of the more Jack Kirby characters, to see John Buscema's version of these characters. One thing I noticed about this epic collection, the stories are written by Stan Lee and Archie Goodwin. Now, this is a point where Stan Lee might or might not have been writing the issues that it says Stan Lee wrote. I am not sure. I don't know. I don't know the truth or the falsity of that kind of claim. If it says Stan Lee on it, I'm just going to say, oh, I guess Stan Lee wrote it. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I did notice in this epic collection that most of the characters that show up in here, we've seen before. I mean, even some minor characters that we've seen before show up in here. So, you know, not a lot of new stuff or new ideas are popping up here, but it's barely noticeable just because of how great everything looks. I have a special soft spot in my heart for this period of the Fantastic Four because these issues that are in this epic collection were the first issues of the Fantastic Four that I read. Other than there was a small paperback book that came out that reprinted the first 6 issues of Fantastic Four by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. It was like this little pocketbook version. You needed like a microscope to see the artwork practically. But those were that was my introduction to the Fantastic Four. And then the first actual comic books I picked up were old comic books that I got from somewhere. I don't even remember where I got them. And this was the very first issue, this one right here, issue 116. This is the very first issue of Fantastic Four comic book, a floppy comic book that I ever picked up and ever read. And I must have read it 100 times. Look at that. Look how great it is. I mean, everything, the characters look magnificent. The action is brilliantly done. I remember being really, really impressed by this comic book and the issues that came after. It's just wonderful, John Buscema's work here. This wasn't the high point of his career. I mean, that is Conan. His Conan stuff is the best. But this is exceptional comic book work. Just the storytelling and the emotion that he's able to convey in the characters. And now in comic books, especially Marvel comic books, you expect the emotions to be exaggerated in the characters, and that might or might not work depending on who's doing the work. John Buscema makes it all work, and this is great where we actually get Doctor Doom working with the Fantastic Four to battle a menace. It's pretty awesome. And yeah, he could do an epic battle or two, this guy. So this was just such a great period of the Fantastic Four. And we get, like I said, we get a lot of characters that we've seen before, but a lot of them are old favorites. Like there's the Black Panther. He shows up in this epic collection. Galactus shows up in this epic collection. So, of course, the Silver Surfer is going to show up. And look at that great version of Galactus. This is particularly interesting because this is a scene that we saw Jack Kirby do, and it was pretty magnificent. But Buscema does this kind of thing in his own way. And Buscema actually drew Buscema actually drew the Silver Surfer comic book for a while too. And so he just he's just great with those characters. It's just awesome. Did I mention this comic book is awesome? Yeah, so this Epic Collection. You know, with the Epic Collections, you can just pick any of them up and just start reading. You never really, because they're always like big chunk of comics usually. You don't really, you shouldn't have to feel like you have to start at volume 1 and go on through to volume 7. You don't have to do that. When it comes to comic books, none of us actually do that. You know, when we start reading a comic book, it's always usually dozens to hundreds of issues after that comic book is started, and then we can go back later. But certainly, if you want a starting point for the Fantastic Four, this is not bad, just because the artwork is so good. The stories are good. I think they could have been better. I don't think the stories measured up to the artwork, actually. I think it's the artwork that really makes this a great Epic Collection, just because Buscema's work is so fantastic. Most of the villains in this we've seen before. They're straight out of the Jack Kirby work that we've already seen. But certainly the artwork is great, and we get to see all of those familiar characters certainly in a whole new way. And we do get some fantastic, literally epic moments in this. So certainly this is a great Epic Collection, in my opinion. We'll see what Steve Donoghue has to say in his video later on today, but I like it. This is good stuff. So yeah, that was my Epic Comic Book Wednesday for today. Catch me next week when we spring forward into the future a little bit. We're going to be talking about Daredevil. And yeah, so catch me next week for another Daredevil Marvel Epic Collection. And I will see you next time. Have a great day, guys.